Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Hogarth's Global Astrology. Know your nation, know yourself. And today is the second installment of my Trump series. Today, I've not, I'm not put on the wings today because it is too warm. But I'm debating: shall I do my video with the wings on? Going forward or not. So please let me know in the comments below if you want me to keep the wings on or if I should put them aside for maybe more special occasions. Forgive me if you see me perspiring a little bit. It's getting quite warm here in London. Got my little cool ginger and lemon drink and to kind of sip. And now I'm just going to get stuck in because the thing is, Trump's chart is so complicated and there's so much going on with it. By the time you've explained it all, the videos end up being quite long. So I don't want the videos to be too long. So I'm just going back to my notes. So just to clarify, so this episode is called Showman to Shambles. And it is exploring the second house of Trump. Well, the first house, which represents the personality, how we come across, our life path, almost like how we try and manifest our higher parts of our personality, essentially, while we're here on Earth, combined with the second house, which is our values and our resources, our family life. Growing up, but most in particular, the second house is associated with money. Right, so let's get stuck in. So here, this is the first house of Donald Trump. We have Mars in the first house, in the sign of Leo, in particular in the nakshatra of Magha, and I'll explain why that's important. And then if we look at the second house here of Donald Trump, it is in the sign of Virgo. But in there we have the planet Neptune, which is in the nakshatra of Hasta. That's very significant. And we have Jupiter, which is in the nakshatra of Chitra. So they're both in the sign of Virgo, which belongs to Mercury, but the nakshatras speak very eloquently about how they affect our personality and reveal elements of our lives on a more personal level. Right, so let's get stuck in. So last episode we talked about Trump's tragic moon, and we'll talk a little bit about that again, but we can also see as well from that last video how the moon helped him. Now, this is something very important. As I said before, the first house represents the personality, what people actually see first off. The moon is very much about our mind and our emotions and how we instinctively respond. But the first house and the ascendant is very much about how we come across, those impressions that we make on people. So now, Trump is a Leo ascendant. It's at 6 degrees 24 minutes of Leo, which is in the nakshatra cluster of Magha. And along there as well, we also have his Mars very close at 3 degrees 40 minutes. Now, this is very significant because not only is, if we think of Leo, what do we think of Leos? We think of confidence. We think of outgoing. They tend to be, Leos tend to be very bright, shining personalities, because this sign is actually ruled by the sun, which most of us will know. So it's to do with shining brightly, being the center of attention. It is also about leadership, being a leader, being a guiding light for others, and basically inspiring people. Now, irrespective of what people may think, and we have lots of opinions about Trump, the astrology is the astrology, and what Leos can often be is larger than life. Because you can imagine it's the energy of the sun, which is basically in the ascendant, in the body. So larger than life personalities. Many stars are seen from who have this ascendant. So if we think of Hollywood, film actors, you know, politicians, people that stand out, but of course reality TV stars as well. Let's not forget, Trump originally was a reality TV star, which is probably the more appropriate use of his gifts and talents, to be honest. But, you know, again, you know, I don't want to put too much personal opinion on it. So anyone that's got a Leo ascendant or any planets in Leo will always have this sense of a bit of lights, camera, action. Yeah, because it's just how Leo operates. But there are different sections in Leo. Leo is made up of a star cluster called Magha, one that is called Purva Falguni, which is where you really see a lot of performers and famous people, and the other one is called Uttara Falguni. Now, what I will do is I will explain these differences, but I also need to talk about Mars. Yeah, Mars. What is Mars? Mars is the planet of energy. Mars is the planet of conflict, of sports, how we compete. Mars is also our discipline, our determination to carry on and persevere. Mars also represents our resilience as well, to a certain extent, the ability to get back up after being knocked down. And it's also, of course, the planet of warfare. Now, again, irrespective of what one feels about Trump, one thing that cannot be denied is somehow this guy's energy, his staying power, the ability to survive, so far at least, all of these scandals, yeah, all of these ups and downs and the Trumpian stuff that's going on. And what's important to know here is that Mars and the Sun, along with the Moon and Jupiter, they are all friends. They all form part of these sort of like the royal family of the Devas, yeah? So the Mars represents the military arm. So where do you take your directions from? You take the directions from the leader, from the king. So Mars does exceptionally well in Leo. And what it does is it just hypes up that Mars even more, because Mars loves being in fire signs. So the fire signs are Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries. And Aries belongs to Mars, but he's very, very comfortable in Leo because Leo is fixed fire. So what it means is that that kind of planning and strategic side of Mars can really come into the fore without getting scattered. So what it does is it can make people have tremendous endurance and energy and just the ability to kind of do stuff. Now, you know, Trump is now in his mid-70s, and I think time is now kind of catching up with him. But I think much of that is to do with the presidency, actually, and the stress of it and stuff like that. But when you look at earlier footage of him, it is remarkable when you see the energy. I was very surprised when Trump was running to learn that he was already in his 70s when he actually, well, I think he was late 60s, early 70s when he was actually running, because he had just that energy and that vitality. Now, also as well, when anyone's got planets in the first house, it just emphasizes that part of the personality. So with Trump, it increases that bombastic kind of explosive side of him, because remember, Mars is also the planet of conflict and war. He loves battle. You can see he's totally up for it. Even when he does his interviews, his meetings, very combative, isn't it? A lot of very chutzpah and quite out there language, very flamboyant and flammable, quite flammable speech. But at the same time, this is also part of what has helped Donald Trump become a reality TV star and also be very convincing, because when you've got a lot of confidence or even Arrogance, very much, can be the shadow side of when you have Mars in Leo. But it's also very compelling. It's also very convincing. Now, it doesn't make excuses for certain things, shall we say, that Trump has said, or those people that support him. But what I do want to put across is when someone has that combination, particularly when they're born on an eclipse as well, it can make that person very overwhelming, and people can just kind of get a bit swept away with it all. And a lot of people, it's almost like an eclipse as well, has the ability to actually cloud people's judgment. Because if you imagine, the sun and the moon are the brightest parts of our consciousness. So when you have a leader that was born on an eclipse, it's almost like they are able to eclipse the most rational parts of ourselves. So it's and that's why I really wanted to discuss this aspect of Trump in detail. Now, something else which is very important, you'll see here, this is an aspect, this is called Drishti, and because Mars, Jupiter and Saturn all look in 3 different places at once. Mars looks at 4, 7 and 8 places from himself, so 4, 7, 8. Jupiter looks in trines, he looks at 5, 7 and 9 places from himself, and Jupiter looks at 3, 7 and 10 places from himself. Now this is really important because you'll see here Mars is making an aspect to the 4th house. Now remember before what I said about real estate. It is said that when you get Mars in an angle, or Saturn in an angle, or Jupiter in was it Jupiter? Well, it has to be one of the malefics, or the Sun. But particularly when you get Mars in an angle, the 1st house is also an angle and a trine. It is very good for real estate because Mars is also the karka, the indicator of real estate. Many people don't know that. Saturn represents land, and you see here he's got Drishti going to the 4th house, which is real estate. So again, this is part of why Trump has been so successful when it comes to real estate. I mean, we know about the various different things, the bankruptcies and all the dodgy stuff, but the fact that he's done so well in real estate, I think, is very interesting. But let's talk about the 2nd house. Let's just have a quick slurp here. Oh, ginger and lemon. Belvoir. Gorgeous. Anyway, we need to talk about the 2nd house. Now, remember, said the 2nd house is values, yeah? But it's also speech. And something that is very important here. Oh, I also forgot to say as well that Marga, sorry, before I do that, just finish off with the nakshatra of Marga. Marga is the throne. And the deities of Marga are the Pitris. And they're our ancestors, effectively. So it's almost like when someone has got significant placements in Marga, it's like the ancestors have put them on the throne to complete their work. And it also refers to patronage and lineage from family. So sometimes those people can often have inheritance or money from their family. Now, as much as Trump likes to say he's a self-made man, remember he got millions of dollars from his father. Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there. And it's very much his business. It's very much about the family business, isn't it? That the whole Trump organization is run in a family way, because Leo is also the sign of family and children and stuff like that, progeny, legacy, and particularly Marga is that way. So of course Trump is trying to do the same again for his family, for better or worse, maybe more on the shadow side. Anyway, so I'm glad we cleared that up. Now, 2nd house. This is very important. What I will do is I'll talk a little bit about Jupiter, because Trump has planet Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion, yeah, wealth, money, confidence, you know, all those kind of things, all of those kind of good things. It's also teachings, it's also education. Yeah. Now it's retrograde. So it means it's going backwards. What that means is, all that means is if one just has to work a bit harder to access those teachings of Jupiter. They're still there, but you just have to dig a little bit deeper. But the important thing is that his Jupiter is in the nakshatra of Chitra, which is now the Chitra, the deity of that, whose name has just escaped me, but I'll just find that out and I'll just write that in somewhere on the screen. But the point is, the deity of Chitra is known as the divine architect. Isn't that interesting? So again, this refers to real estate, because the second house can also refer to the roof over your head, because it's your resources, your family, what you were born into. So you can see when someone's got Jupiter in the second house, it's a real blessing actually, because it has a lot to do with finance. That person can actually go on to do very well financially. However, there's a bit of shadow here as well, because this Jupiter Chitra, this Chitra spans Virgo and Libra. Yeah. He's on the Virgo side, which means it belongs to Mercury. And Mercury and Jupiter are not necessarily very friendly with each other. So what it can do is, Mercury is all about facts and details and the small print. And Jupiter is all about the big picture. So what it can do is it can make that Jupiter almost a little bit cynical in a way. And it just kind of takes the edge off that more kind of spiritual side of Jupiter. But Jupiter is not alone. Here you see this thing that looks like a little key. Actually, I should actually probably show it here. I can show it here on this. That is the symbol for Chiron. And Chiron is the wounded healer. Yeah, the wounded healer. And this is really important. And like I said, this is home and values and all that kind of stuff. So it suggests that Trump has a wound there in that family home environment. And if we remember from the video from beforehand, that wound came from the relationship with the mother. So I just thought I'd just explain that. That's very interesting. And Chiron is the wounded healer that wasn't able to heal himself. But the way we can heal ourselves, depending where Chiron is by helping others with those issues. And in which case here, this would be areas related to finance. Yeah. Now, if these two were on their own, that could also have made Trump an extraordinarily generous man. And maybe he was generous, and maybe he is generous, but it doesn't certainly seem to be the case at this stage. Now, this is really important. Here we see Neptune, and we need to remember that who planets are with also hugely influence. Neptune is an amazing planet. Yeah, I've spoken about Neptune in my other videos. It's to do with spirituality, oneness, great talents as well. Neptune can give extraordinary talent to a person, particularly gifts for music and creativity and even interior design, which again, something that Trump is actually good at. Like some of his buildings, you know, I was watching a documentary on him, and some of his buildings are quite spectacular. You notice that lavishness, that gold, that almost that over the top kind of style. And that is very Neptunian, because Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, and Venus is the arts and beauty and stuff like that in general. So Neptune can really kind of go completely over the top. But most importantly, Neptune in the shadow side is also the planet of deception, scandals, intrigue, fog, mist, not being able to understand something properly. It's also the planet of delusion. You know, that is a big part of the shadow of Neptune. But what is even more interesting is that his Neptune is in the nakshatra of Hasta. Now, Hasta means hand, and it sits in Virgo. And Hasta is to do with the ability, skills, yeah, hand skills. It often covers arts and crafts, practical things, being able to build stuff for a tangible result. But the shadow of Hasta is manipulation. And there is a part of Hasta, in terms of its description, is also known as the laughing one. But this doesn't necessarily mean comedy in the sense of telling jokes all the time. I mean, people who have Hasta strong can have great, you know, very entertaining personalities. But there is this element of the in-joke with Hasta, where there's an in-joke where people are being exploited and laughed at without them knowing it. Yeah? So that's very significant. So there is this kind of in-joke, this kind of almost thumbing the nose at people, yeah, and at the wider world, which we see Trump do a lot. And if we think about this, remember Neptune, like I said, is the planet that can obscure, that can mystify things, that can hide things. It's the planet of secrets. What are the things that we don't know much about in terms of Trump? His finances, they've been kept secret. Because also as well, if you look, what is the house that's opposite the second house? It's the 8th house, which is the house of you know, death, rebirth, but also as well, it's the house, it's also a very secretive house. It's also the house of scandals as well. But it deals a lot with money as well, particularly about the resources of others, and tax and investments and, you know, financial products of some kind. And we see here that it's also in the sign of Pisces, and Pisces is a very nebulous sign, and Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces in Western astrology with Jupiter. And both those planets are in the second house of money. But Neptune is there, which is causing that deception, that illusion. Trump is the only president not to reveal his financial details. So I find that fascinating that the Neptune is not only there, it's also retrograde, which is more inclined to bring the shadow side of the planet out, as well as Jupiter is retrograde. But it's in that nakshatra of Hasta, which is manipulation. So you can see there's a lot of manipulative and deceptive teachings in a way, because the Jupiter is also the sign of the guru, the teacher. And the second house also refers to speech. And Virgo is ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication. But not only that, Virgo is also the sign of health, yeah? Or good health or poor health, but it's to do with health. So what is it that we've been hearing from Trump? A lot of misspeaking, a lot of disinformation about the big C, putting forward hypotheses, ideas, concepts, philosophies, which is covered by Jupiter, that are not true. There is a deception to it. You know, I mean, look, in the earlier stages of the big C, it was all up for grabs. But we know hydroxychloroquine has been debunked now. We can all agree this. And he keeps pushing it. And also as well, the wounded healer there. And this is causing injury. So I just thought that that was very interesting in this aspect, particularly in terms of communication. And just to wrap up, just so that this video is not too long, this is all about those hidden finances. Now we know the niece Mary Trump has kind of put her own things forward, but there are many people who have written books about Trump, and one of the main things they talk about is his finances. You got to remember, he's not a listed company, so he's not legally bound as a company to produce public accounts. So he's a private company, but he's extended that, of course, to the presidency. But all of the presidential candidates are supposed to make their their accounts public, so they can prove there's no conflict of interest. We don't have that because that Neptune has cast a veil over that those accounts, of Trump. And so we will have to see if we will ever find out if those accounts will ever be revealed. Have you noticed there's this huge resistance? Somehow he's been able to resist those investigations. Another thing I want to say as well is that with Neptune also being the planet of deception, being with the wounded healer Chiron, and also being with the planet of wealth, what I want to say is that the way I read that is, it could be that Trump is not as rich as he says he is. Yeah, I'm not saying the guy is poor. He's obviously, he's not poor, but many people say that maybe he doesn't have quite as much money as he would like us to think. And for me, seeing this combination here in the second house, in the sign of wealth, with Chiron, which is the wounded healer, and Jupiter with Neptune, and Neptune being in the sign of manipulation to an extent, with a retrograde Neptune, says to me we're not getting the facts there. It could well emerge, it could come out that maybe he's not a billionaire. I mean, I'm sure he's a multi-millionaire, but a lot of his wealth as well, you need to remember, is wrapped up in real estate. And we need to remember that you can't spend real estate like you can in the shops. Real estate is very expensive. It holds a lot of wealth. But you tend to only get the liquidity of that real estate once it's sold. Yeah. So remember as well, if we also think of with Trump and those financial difficulties that he's had as well, the detailings of the bankruptcies, etc. Neptune is very good at doing that, because what it can do is it can just give you a not so practical grasp of money. It can be great for money as well, but it's always a bit nebulous. It's always a little bit mysterious. So this could also explain some of those bankruptcies. Trump says he never went bankrupt, but then plenty more that say they do. And also the wounded healer there as well in the second house could show that is a source of pain. So what would be a source of loss in the second house, apart from family values and talking about money, but of course losing money. Anyway, so I think I've said enough about that. So this was part 2 of this Trump video, and next I will be moving on to episode 3, where I will discuss Trump's career. Yeah, his career and the impact that's made. So that one's going to be called Real Estate to Reality Star. How government became a game show. So tune in for that one. If you've liked and found what I've said interesting, please comment in the comments below. Feel free, of course, to like and share. If anyone would like a consultation with me, then of course follow my website, which is thearchetypalblueprint.com, and I could look at your finances, love, fate, destiny, how to navigate this very complex world that we now find ourselves in. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let's see what happens there. Let's see if that truth emerges. Let's see, if the astrology is right. Is Trump as rich as he says he is? Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. But yeah, if you've enjoyed that, please give a thumbs up and share. And I look forward to our next episode where we're looking at Trump's career. All right, thank you.